What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto entered a mission, and came back with a harem? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. Konoha was the shinobi center of the Land of Fire. It was a village that could lay claim to many things. Its Hokage who have watched over the village since its beginning, lively and happy citizens, and its academy that trained the future generation of shinobi. Walking out of the convenience store closest to her home was one of the many shinobi hopefuls who attended the academy, a plastic bag holding her purchases hanging in her right hand. It wasn't anything to write home about. Her parents spent a lot of time working, so usually it was just her for super, so she usually just pigged out on snacks or heated up the occasional pre-made meal. She was a rather attractive girl for her age, sporting purple hair that was cut off at chin length save for the bangs on the left side of her face that stretched down to the slight bulges of her B-cup S. Her attire consisted of a dull blue blouse that had a yellow and pink vertically stripped cloth covering the front that she had tied around her neck and waist. To cover her long legs she wore a red skirt that nearly reached her knees and dark blue shinobi sandals that came up to her mid-shin. As the sun lowered and the blue sky began to change to a vibrant orange, she shut her brain off and let her legs carry her along the same path home she'd been using for years. She didn't quite know what it was, but life had become so boring. Every day it was the same thing. She got up in the morning, got ready for school, tried to stay awake through class, hung out with her friends, and then headed home to repeat it all again the next day. Coming to an intersection, this girl who found herself trapped in a rut encountered something to push her out of it. With a thud, the girl was on her back, staring up at the clear sky above as the contents of her bag rolled across the ground. "Ow!" the girl hissed out as she pushed herself into a sitting position with her right arm while rubbing the back of her head with her other arm. Glancing around, the first thing she noticed was the food around of her, half of which had fallen out of their containers and spilled all over the ground. "Shit!" the girl cussed as she scrambled to salvage what she could. Hearing someone moving behind her, she spun around to grab whoever it was and pulled them to eye level as she stood on her knees. "Hey jackass, that was my super. How are you going to make up for it, huh?" she shouted as she got in the guy's face, only for her eyes to widen as she stared into blue eyes. Those blue eyes, that blonde hair and whisker marks, she knew who this was. Hell, everyone knew who he was. He's the kid everyone talked about with hushed words. As the blonde started to apologize, the girl let out a quiet sigh as she pushed him back to the ground. "Forget it," she breathed out as she got to her feet. Nothing good would come of this if she stayed any longer. She'll just head back to the shop and get some more food. Pushing himself up, the blonde was ready to yell at the girl for pushing him when he saw her walking away. Is she really going to make that big of a fuss and then just walk away, like nothing had happened? "Why don't you come to my house?" The words flowed out of his mouth before he even thought about them. At first he was sure that saying that was a mistake, that she's just laugh at him for asking, but she simply stopped walking away. After a pause, the girl looked over her shoulder. "And why would I do that?" The tone in her voice, it didn't come off as mocking or have any anger behind it, but rather, she was curious. With a bit of surprise and hope, a wide grin formed on the blonde's face as he folded his arms behind his head. "My mom's a really good cook. I'm sure you'll love it," the blonde told her. Thinking back on it, it was probably a stupid reason, but the prospect of having a home-cooked meal after so long was simply irresistible too. She'd told herself that one visit wouldn't hurt, and now, well over a year later, she was in the blonde's room watching him pack for a protection mission his team had been assigned. With a sigh, Naruto paused in placing the supplies he had laid out on his bed into his backpack. "Amy, it's kind of hard to pack like this," the blonde told the girl whose arms were wrapped around his neck. "Don't care," Amy told him as she pressed herself into his back further. He was going to be gone for weeks guarding some bridge builder. She wasn't going to miss out on the few hours she had before he left. "Doesn't your team have any missions today?" Naruto asked as he started filling his bag again. Nuzzling her chin into the top of his head, Amy noted that holding him like this was getting difficult. She'd always been taller than him, but lately he was closing the distance. A few more months and he'll probably be taller than her. "Ishiko-sensei gave us the day off because her love life sucks," Amy told him. After having a woman like Ishiko for a sensei for nearly a year now, her, Kasumi, and Fuki came to expect seeing her show up with tear-stained cheeks every month or so and telling them about how she was stood up, or she was dumped, or the guy was married the whole time. Usually they sat around and comforted her for an hour or two before they got the day off whenever it happened. Ah, Naruto responded. It must be tough, but still, better than having a sensei that's always late. Hey, Naruto. Amy began as she took her head off of his and rested it on his shoulder. When the blonde turned his head to look at her, she quickly leaned in to place a quick kiss on his lips. Leaning her head back, she grinned as the faint blush on his cheeks. Consider that a good luck charm. After getting everything packed, Naruto was seen off by Amy and his mother as he went to meet up with the others at the mains gate and then ultimately heading out for the Land of Waves. As the day dragged on, the four shinobi plus bridge builders spent a good portion of the walk in silence. That is until Naruto's pink-haired teammate wanted to ask their charge something. Say, Mr. Tazuna, Sakura spoke up in order to get the man's attention. Next to her was the third and final genin of their squad, Sasuke Uchiha. Next to him was their sensei, Kakashi Hitaki, with the bridge builder next to him, leaving Naruto walking a few steps in front of the group. What is it? Tazuna asked, sounding almost irritated. Your country is the Land of Waves, right? The pink kid asked. Yeah, what of it? Tazuna questioned, turning to her sensei, Kakashi sensei. There are shinobi in that country as well, aren't there? The girl asked. No, there are no shinobi in the Land of Waves, Kakashi told her. But in other countries, there are hidden villages, each with their own customs and cultures, where shinobi reside. To the people of this continent, the existence of shinobi villages means strength, military strength. In other words, that's how they protect themselves and maintain the balance with neighboring countries. The shinobi villages are not controlled by any government, they're independent and have equal status. Now a small island like the Land of Waves has natural protection from the sea, so there's no need for a shinobi village, Kakashi was explaining when Naruto interjected. What about Uzushigakure? The blonde asked as he looked over his shoulder, getting odd looks from Sakura and Tazuna. Uzushigakure was one of the first shinobi villages to be founded. They used the surrounding whirlpools that gave their nation its name to train and develop ninjutsu safely away from the outside world. Uzushigakure was the only major settlement to be established there, but unfortunately Uzushigakure no longer exists, Kakashi said. Leaving it at that, he was sure that Kushina would have already told him about the village she was born in and didn't want to risk opening up old wounds by going on longer than needed. What do you mean it doesn't exist? What happened? Sakura asked, unsurprisingly curious about this new information, even if Kakashi wanted to avoid the topic. Well, you see, Kakashi begins, trying to figure out the best way to tactfully explain it when Sasuke answered for him. It was wiped out in the last Great War, the young Uchiha said. Not what Kakashi was hoping for, but at least he didn't have to say it. What? Wiped out? Sakura exclaimed as her attention darted to the raven-haired teen next to her. The Uzumaki clan that first founded the village had strong ties to Konoha. Even though Uzushio hadn't taken part in the conflict, the other nations feared what would happen if they sided with our village and entered the war, so they took action before that could happen and leaving the village in ruin, Sasuke explained. Uzumaki? The pink kid repeated before her eyes widened. You don't mean? Sakura went one as her head turned to stare at her blonde teammate's back. Feeling her gaze on him, Naruto said, my mom was born there. Hearing that made the pink kid feel like shit for pushing the topic. When she tried to apologize, Naruto just shook his head before looking over his shoulder. You don't have to apologize, it happened a long time ago, the blonde told her with a grin. She still felt bad about it, but for now Sakura listened to the blonde. After that, the group returned to traveling in silence, albeit with a slightly uncomfortable atmosphere around them. As they moved further away from the village, they passed by a small puddle, surely a common sight, though it did catch Kakashi's attention. They passed by without any problem, but after their backs were turned, the small pool of water warped and rose until two figures clad in gas masks and sporting two large clawed gauntlets between them, one having it on his right hand while the other wore it on his left. With trained speed, the first shinobi threw his companion at the group as a long spiked chain shot out to connect their gauntlets. Before a normal human could react, they had the chain wrapped tightly around Kakashi's body, and with a swift tug from both of them, the chain tore through the man like tissue paper. As Kakashi's remains fell to the ground, kicking up a bloody cloud, Sakura let out a startled cry as she stumbled back, and Naruto let out a cry for his fallen sensei. Just as the blonde was going to rush over in some vain hope that Kakashi was alright, the two assassins popped up behind him, chuckling as they narrowed their eyes. "Now it's your turn," one of them said as they moved to entangle Naruto like they had Kakashi. Reaching for his weapons pouch, the blonde moved to jump back, hoping he'd get out of their range before it was too late when Sasuke jumped into the action, unleashing a shuriken that pinned the chain to a nearby tree before following it with a kunai to pin his first thrown weapon into the trunk as well. As Naruto brought his kunai out, he watched as Sasuke landed on the gauntlets that were now keeping their owners at bay. Placing his hands on the gauntlets, the Uchiha kicked out with his feet, using the trap chain to his advantage to add even more of an impact as his feet slammed into the pair's faces. With their chain hindering them now, they opted to detach themselves from it and split up, one of them rushing for Tazuna while the other went for Naruto. "Hinoka, Honakawa," Kushina called out as she wandered around the residence. Coming to a stop at the garden at the back of her home, she placed her hands on her hips and let out a huff. Where could that girl be? Seeing Amy tossing kunai as a target pinned to the large cherry tree, the red-haired woman called her over. Halting her arm before the next blade left her hand, the teen looked over to see the woman waving her over. Amy flicked it in the tree's general direction before running over to the woman. "What do you need?" Amy asked before she came to a stop in front of the woman. "Hinoka, I haven't seen her since this morning." "You haven't seen her, have you?" Kushina asked. "Oh, she went with Naruto," Amy easily answered, getting a surprised look from Naruto's mother. What the shinobi who had targeted Tazuna grunted out, his body being restrained by golden chains just before he was about to pierce through the genin standing between him and the old man with his metal claws. His partner wasn't faring much better as he stared down the person responsible for stopping them. Between him and Naruto was a woman with dark eyes and long, straight red hair tied into a thick braid which she wore with a white band. Her clothes consisted of a purple, sleeveless kimono blouse with yellow trimmings held close by a traditional obi with a long, streaming bow tied to it, having mesh armor underneath, and wearing a short white skirt with nothing covering her legs or feet. "Hinoka?" Naruto questioned as he found himself staring at the woman's back. "Since when and how was she here?" Looking over her shoulder, the teen gave him a warm smile and a quick nod. "I suppose I should thank you for that," Kakashi said, directing everyone's attention up to the tree branch he was kneeling on. "Kakashi-sensei." But Sakura was surprised as she from the man to where his remains should be only to see a pile of sliced wood. "A substitution," the pinkett commented with a few blinks as she put two and two together. Jumping down, the silver-haired shinobi began to casually walk over to the group, noticing the scowl Hinoka was giving him. "I would have stepped in if they needed me. Promise," Kakashi told the girl with a smile, even if it wasn't obvious through his cloth mask. However, his response didn't seem to change her mood as she jerked her head to the side, her scowl still in place. "Oh well," turning his attention to the bridge builder. "Tazuna," Kakashi said, getting a startled reaction from the man as Tazuna began sweating bluids. "We need to talk," Kakashi told him. "How did you know about our ambush?" one of the enemy shinobi asked after the pair was tied to a tree. "A puddle, on a clear day when it hasn't rained in weeks?" Kakashi answered with a question of his own. "In that case, why'd you leave it to the genin to do the fighting?" Tazuna asked the junin. "I could have taken them out quickly, but then I'd have learned nothing. I had to know who their target was, and what they were after," Kakashi said as he stared at the bridge builder from the corner of his eye. What are you getting at?" Tazuna questioned. "This," Kakashi said as he turned to face the man. "I wanted to know if they were after us, shinobi attacking shinobi. Or, if they were attacking you, the master bridge builder. When you put in your request you asked for standard protection, from robbers and highwaymen. You didn't say there were shinobi looking for you, hunting you down. If we knew this, it would be a B-rank mission or higher. Our task was to simply get you to your destination and protect you while you completed your bridge. If we knew we'd be fielding attacks from enemy shinobi, we would have staffed differently and charged for the price of a B mission. Apparently you have your reasons, but lying to us is unacceptable. We are now beyond the scope of this mission," Kakashi told the man. As Kakashi spoke, Tazuna's head lowered, hiding his face behind the wide straw hat he wore. He knew that he had lied to them, but what choice did he have? "If we just leave him like this, he'll be killed. We can't let that happen," Tazuna heard the blonde kid say. With determination in his eyes like that, Kakashi found it hard to outright refuse to continue the mission. With a sigh, the Junin told the group, "We'll deliver Tazuna to his home as per the mission and then determine from there if we'll continue." As the blonde cheered that the mission wasn't over yet, Kakashi redirected a hard look at Tazuna. "I'll expect an explanation by the time we arrive." Despite the chill that ran down his spine, Tazuna was still grateful that they weren't simply leaving him for dead. The fog was dense as the group was being ferried to the land of waves aboard a small fishing boat. The man transporting them, a friend of Tazuna's, had cut the engine and was rowing them the rest of the way. At the front of the small boat sat Hinoka, staring out into the deep mist. Since she'd suddenly appeared to save them, the woman had traveled alongside the group. Out of everyone, Sakura had become the most interested in the teen. The fact that she had yet to utter a single word piqued the pinket's curiosity. "Sensei," Sakura began in a hushed tone as she turned to Kakashi. When he turned his one visible eye to her, she continued, "Who is that woman? It seems like her and Naruto know each other." It probably would have been better to ask Naruto about this, but Kakashi figured she didn't want to pry unnecessarily into the blonde's past, especially after the conversation they had earlier. Kushina, Naruto's mother, sometimes takes him out of the village to travel. During their last trip a few months back, they encountered Hinoka on a strange island. There was nothing for her there, so she came back to the village with them. Kakashi gave the short version of events. No point in getting his students' head filled with spirits and experimental summoning creatures while they were on a mission. "The bridge isn't far now. Our destination's just up ahead, the land of waves," the boat owner told them. Moments later, the sight of the massive bridge drifted into view, even with the mist that surrounded them. It was truly a sight to behold. "Woo! It's huge," Naruto exclaimed as he marveled at the structure. Unsurprisingly, the boat owner chastised the blonde for the outburst. They were after all traveling in silence for a reason. Naruto instantly covered his mouth with his hands with an apologetic expression, followed shortly after with a smile from Hinoka as she patted his head reassuringly. "Tazuna," Kakashi began as he turned to the bridge builder. "Before we reach the pier, I want to ask you something." When the man remained silent, Kakashi went on, "The men who are after you, I need to know why. If you don't tell us, I'm afraid I'll have to end this mission when we drop you ashore." "No more putting it off then." With all eyes on him, Tazuna began, "I have no choice but to tell you. No, I want you to know the truth. Like you said, this is beyond the original scope of the mission. The one who is after my life is a very short man who casts a very long and deadly shadow." "A deadly shadow? Who is it?" Kakashi asked. "You know him, or at least I'm sure you've heard his name before. He's one of the wealthiest men in the world, the shipping magnate Gato," Tazuna says, surprising Kakashi. "Gato? Of Gato Transport? He's a business leader, everyone knows him," Kakashi says. "Gato is a very powerful tycoon, a famous company, that's for sure, but below the surface, with the same ruthless methods he uses to take over businesses and nations, he sells drugs and contraband using gangs and shinobi. It was 1 year ago when Gato set his sights on the land of waves. He came to our island and used his wealth to take total control of our transport and shipping. Anyone who tried to stand in his way simply disappeared. In an island nation, a man who controls the sea controls everything: finance, government, our very lives. But there's one thing he fears: the bridge. When it is complete, it'll join us to the land, and that will break his control. I am the bridge builder," Tazuna tells them. "So that's it, since you're building this bridge, you're standing in this gangster's way," Sakura summed up. "That mean the guys we fought in the forest were working for Gato," Sasuke added. "I don't understand. If you knew he was dangerous, knew he'd send shinobi to eliminate you, why did you hide that from us?" Kakashi asked the bridge builder. "Because the land of waves is a small, impoverished nation. Even our nobles have little money. The common people who are building this bridge, they can't pay for an A or B ranked mission. It's too expensive. If you end the mission when you drop me ashore, there will be no bridge. They'll assassinate me before I reach home," Tazuna tells them. Glancing up, the old man then said, "But don't feel bad about that. Of course my sweet little grandson will be upset. He'll cry, 'Granddad. I want my granddad,' using his best little kid voice, in regard to what his grandson would say. Oh, and my daughter will condemn the shinobi of Konoha, denouncing and blaming you for abandoning her father and living her life in sorrow," Tazuna tells them. "Ah well, it's not your fault. Forget it," the man adds. Turning to one another, the shinobi all shared the same guilt-ridden expression. Well, I guess we have no choice, we'll have to keep guarding you, Kakashi says as he turns back to Tazuna and shrugs his shoulders. Ooh, I'm very grateful, Tazuna sincerely says while on the inside he was grinning like a madman for getting them to continue the mission. A little while later brought the group to a large stone wall built to break up large waves before they could reach the shore. As they went, the boat slipped into one of the many tunnels built into the wall. Once they'd passed through, they were met with the sight of a town built around and partially over an estuary with many trees growing out of the water. Apparently the fog hadn't crept to this side of the wide stone wall they'd passed through, as the sun was shining and they could see without restriction. Once they were on dry land, the boat owner told Tazuna to be careful before starting up his motor and driving off. Tazuna lived outside the town, so even though they were finally in the land of waves, they still had to walk to a different part of the island. Though at least it wasn't too far away. The next shinobi they send won't be Chunin, they'll be Junin, elite shinobi with deadly skills, Kakashi thought to himself as left the town. Scanning the immediate area, the man's lone eye landed on the back of Hinoka's head. Even if she wasn't supposed to be here, her presence helped relieve a lot of stress he'd otherwise have. Her skills may prove invaluable on this mission. As they were nearing Tazuna's home, Hinoka walked up to the blonde. From behind, Sakura watched them with raised eyebrows as the red-haired teen leaned in closer to the blonde, their shoulders brushing up against each other every now and then. What are they doing? Don't they realize we're supposed to be on the lookout for enemy shinobi right now? Sakura thought to herself, oddly more irritated by the display more than she should be. A quick glance to the side had her letting out a sigh as her eyes landed on Sasuke. If only me and Sasuke could be like that, the pink kid thought to herself, picturing her and the Uchiha walking side by side. Just as Sakura was pulling herself out of her thoughts, her blonde teammate reached into the weapon pouch wrapped around his leg. Pulling a kunai out, Naruto turned to the side and tossed the weapon into a patch of bushes along the path and putting the others on edge in the process. After a moment, the blonde straightened himself out and relaxed his body with a confused look on his face. Did I miss? The blonde thought aloud. Hinoka let him know that they were being followed, but still, you'd think he'd get a reaction if he'd tossed a kunai at the guy. If nothing else, the blonde's question seemed to kill the tension he'd just made. As the others were grumbling or shaking their heads at the blonde, Kakashi went over to investigate. Pushing the brush aside, the Junin found a startled white rabbit below the kunai that was now embedded into a tree. Naruto, look what you did, Sakura angrily told the blonde when she saw the poor bunny. For Naruto's part, he immediately felt bad for scaring the thing half to death and rushed over to it, picking it up and cradling it while apologizing. Kakashi, however, had a different reaction, a much different reaction. That's a snow rabbit, but the color. They only have white fur during winter, when the days are short and there's little sunlight, the silver-haired shinobi thought as he looked around at the bright forest around them. This rabbit was raised indoors away from the light, which can only be for one purpose, a substitution jutsu. Looking over to Hinoka, he saw the woman on guard while the other were focused on the rabbit. So they're already here, Kakashi thought to himself. Hidden in the shadows of the forest, a tall, muscular man with short, spiky black hair watched the group. Similar to Kakashi's black mask, this man's lower face was covered with white bandages. The headband he wore sideways displayed the markings of Kirigakure, marking him as a shinobi originating from that village. He wore no shirt, with the only thing covering his chest being a belt that supported the massive sword on his back. The clothes he did wear consisted of baggy pants with a stripped pattern and white arm and leg warmers with a blotchy brown pattern on them. No wonder the demon brothers failed in their mission, the man thought as he reached up to grab the handle of his weapon. It's the copy shinobi from Konoha, Kakashi of the Sharingan, the man thought to himself as his eyes came to focus on the silver-haired man. Feeling an oncoming attack, Kakashi spun on his heel while telling everyone to get down. From the trees, the massive sword of their enemy was spinning right for them, aimed to take of their heads. As everyone ducked to avoid the blade, Hinoka rushed to the center of the group, golden chains erupting from her back. Shooting out in front of her, the half-dozen chains formed a quick barrier between the group and the sword, sending the blade tumbling back. Jumping into the open, the sword's owner grabbed its handle before it could crash against the dirt. That technique. So you're an Uzumaki then? To think there are still some of you left in the world. the man commented as he and Hinoka stared each other down. Well, if it isn't Zabuza Momochi, rogue shinobi of Kirigakure, Kakashi remarked as the group got back to their feet. Turning his attention from Hinoka back to Kakashi Hitaki of the Sharingan. Did I get that right? Zabuza said. After hearing Kakashi being linked to the Sharingan, Sasuke's eyes immediately darted over to his sensei. It's too bad, but you'll have to hand over the old man, Zabuza told him as Kakashi's hand came up to grab the headband he had covering his left eye. Quick, Manji formation. Hinoka, assist them in guarding the bridge builder. Kakashi told them before lifting up his headband to reveal a vertical scar running over his left eye that possessed the Sharingan. At his command, the three genin rushed to Tazuna and took up formation, with Hinoka coming up behind the bridge builder and redeploying her chakra chains to set up a protective barrier around them. Well, looks like I get to see the Sharingan, as well as the renowned special sea chakra of the Uzumaki clan in action. This is an honor, Zabuza quipped as he saw the red eye. And barrier of golden chains. Sharingan, what is it? Sakura asked, her curiosity getting the better of her, with Sasuke being the one to answer her. Sharingan, a rare dojutsu. The user of this visual jutsu can instantly see and comprehend any ninjutsu, genjutsu, or taijutsu and reflect the attack back on the enemy. However, there's more to the Sharingan than that. Much more, Sasuke explained as his mind went back to his clan. Among the few who lived through the clan's internal war and remain in the village, only his mother and a small handful of now retired shinobi possess a fully developed Sharingan. So why does Kakashi have one? You got it right, boy, but you've only scratched the surface. The Sharingan can analyze an opponent's technique and then copy it to the smallest detail, Zabuza said as a thick fog started to roll in. As for you Junin, in the assassination unit of Kirigakure we had a standing order to destroy you on Sai. Your profile was in our bingo book, it called you the man who's copied over 1,000 jutsu. Kakashi, the copy shinobi, Zabuza told him before vanishing from sight. Moments later Sakura called out that he was standing on the nearby lake. With his arms held up in the appropriate hand signs, the rogue shinobi called upon his stable technique. Water style. Hidden mist jutsu. The man called out before the thick fog grew even more dense and his form disappeared. He'll come after me first, Kakashi told his team. But, who is he? Sakura questioned. Zabuza Momochi, the ex-leader of Kirigakure's assassination unit. He's a master of the silent killing technique, Kakashi told them. Silent? Naruto asked. As the name suggests, it happens in an instant, without sound or warning of any kind. It's so fast you pass from this life without realizing what has happened. The Sharingan cannot fully neutralize it, so don't lower your guard, Kakashi told them. Even with Hinoka's barrier there's no way of knowing if it'll hold out against this opponent, not until it's too late. Well, if we fail we only lose our lives. Kakashi made a dark joke to lighten the mode, which worked despite Sakura questioning how he could say something like that. The mist is getting thicker and thicker, Naruto commented as the distance they could see shrunk more and more. The land of waves is surrounded by ocean. The swirling mists are ever present, Tazuna said as the mist grew so thick that they could no longer see Kakashi. From the mist Zabuza's voice could be heard calling out to them. 8 points. Larynx, spine, lungs, liver, jugular, subclavian artery, kidneys, heart. Now, which will be my kill point? The man said, sending a terrifying chill through the group. Bringing his hands together, Kakashi let loose a surge of chakra, dispersing a good portion of the mist and allowing his team to see him again. As the man did this, 2 chakra-infused kunai came from the still lingering mist to collide with Hinoka's barrier, testing its strengths. As the weapons fell harmlessly to the ground, Zabuza spoke up once again. It said a master of the art can create a barrier that no man can break. I wonder, do you possess that kind of skill? When the words reached the group, Zabuza dashed out from the mist, the Kabikirabocho held tightly in his hands as he swung the massive blade into Hinoka's barrier. Under the weight and power of Zabuza's attack, the chains buckled and sparked as the barrier strained itself but refused to yield to Zabuza's might. Wincing from the strain, Hinoka redoubled her efforts as Kakashi rushed over to take on Zabuza. Drawing the kunai, Kakashi shot straight for the assassin, thrusting the blade into his unprotected abdomen. Soon after, several splashed could be heard as water escaped from the wound. With a cry from Naruto, the Junin was alerted to a second Zabuza behind him. With Kabikurabocho ready to kill once again, the first Zabuza reverted back to water as the other swung his blade. Die! Zabuza shouted as he cut right through Kakashi. However, what fell to the ground after was not a core but another puddle of water. The water clone jutsu? Zabuza thought with widened eyes. It can't be. Even in the mist he saw through my illusion and copied it in an instant, Zabuza concluded as he felt the cold metal of Kakashi's weapon press up against his neck. Don't move, Kakashi ordered as he stood behind the rogue shinobi with a kunai ready to slice through his neck. It's over. You're finished, the silver-haired Junin told the man. When Zabuza simply began to chuckle at his statement, Kakashi was put on edge. Finished? You really don't get it, do you? Zabuza questioned. Your technique is nothing but a crass imitation. I'll never be defeated by a mere copycat like you, Zabuza said as Kakashi glared at the man. With a few more chuckles, Zabuza added, but you are full of surprises though. You'd already copied my water clone jutsu by the time I launched my attack. Very skillfully executed, leaving your clone out in the open while you hid in the mist, waiting for me to make my move. Nice try, Zabuza said before another one appeared behind Kakashi. But I'm not that easy to fool, Zabuza said as the one in front of Kakashi turned to water. With split-second timing, Kakashi ducked under Zabuza's attack, however that didn't mean he was safe. The Kabikurabocho continued in its path until coming behind Zabuza and planting itself into the ground. Using the weapon as a perch to amplify the impact of his next strike, Zabuza spun quickly and with a single kick he sent Kakashi flying into the lake. Firmly grabbing the handle once more, Zabuza rushed in for another attack but came to a stop just before hitting the water. As Kakashi went sailing through the air, he dropped iron spikes on the ground, but they did little to impede him as Zabuza simply jumped over them and dove into the water. Seeing their sensei get hit like that understandably left an impact on the three genin. Coming up for air, Kakashi took note that the water didn't feel right, like it was heavy or dense. However, he didn't have long to think about it as Zabuza ran up behind him. Ha, fool, Zabuza mocked as he ran through hand signs. Once finished, he called out the name of his water prison jutsu and entrapped Kakashi in a sphere of water. Escaping into the water, big mistake, Kakashi thought as he took in the position he was in. He, this prison is made of water but it's stronger than steel. It's hard to fight when you can't move. So much for the great Kakashi, Zabuza said with a low chuckle as he stared down at his trapped foe, his right hand sticking into the sphere to keep it stable. I'll finish you off later, but first, your little friends will have to be eliminated, the man said as he turned his attention back to the group. With a single hand, Zabuza summoned forth yet another water clone from the lake. He's even more skilled than I thought, Kakashi worriedly thought as Zabuza began to chuckle again. You think having a headband makes you a shinobi? When you've hovered between life and death so many times it doesn't even faze you, then, you may be called a shinobi. When you've become so deadly your profile is entered into my bingo book, then, you may have earned the title shinobi. But to call upstarts like you shinobi, is a joke, the clone spoke before summoning forth more fog. This was bad, the genin couldn't fight Zabuza alone and Hinoka needs to concentrate on the barrier if it's to survive an attack from the man. Looks like there's no other choice. Listen, take the bridge builder and run. You can't win this fight. He's using all of his power to keep me in this prison so he can only fight you with his water clone, but the clone can't go far from the real body. If you go far enough he can't follow, so run. Kakashi called out to the group. No, they couldn't just leave him. With his hands tightening around his kunai, Naruto was ready to take this guy on, but a hand coming to rest on his shoulder eased his anger. Hinoka, what is it? The blonde asked as he looked over his shoulder at the woman. Without uttering a single word, the Uzumaki girl conveyed what was on her mind as the pair stared into one another's eyes. Got it. You want us to protect the bridge builder, Naruto said as he turned his head back forward. He wanted to get in on the action, but this was their best option. We can't run away. We're dead if we run, Sasuke argued after hearing the blonde. Even with Hinoka's protection it'd only be a matter of time before he got around her barrier, the Uchiha reasoned. Hinoka was a skilled shinobi, but this was beyond her capability. You said we're running? Naruto asked, getting odd looks from Sakura, Sasuke, and Tazuna. Turning to Tazuna, Hinoka stared deeply into his eyes, and while the bridge builder didn't have the advantage of shinobi training, even he could tell what she wanted to say. I never hired you in the first place. I've no right to stop you if you want to help there, sensei, Tazuna told the girl. With a warm smile she gave the man a nod before taking down the barrier. Turning to the water clone, Hinoka once more put on a determined expression. So, finally going to fight, are you? Zabuza asked as he stared the woman down. There's only ever been one Uzumaki to make it into my bingo book, the clone said as it reached up for its sword. Let's see how to stack up to Konoha's Red Death, Zabuza taunted her. Back with the original Zabuza. What are you doing? I told you to run. This fight was over the moment I got caught, Kakashi yelled out to the group. However, his cries fell on deaf ears as Hinoka charged the water clone. As the redhead approached the clone, Zabuza's Kabikirabocho came off his back. Leaning back, Hinoka used her momentum to slide under the swinging blade. Once she was underneath him, her chains once more shot out from her body, using the large spikes at the end to impale the clone. As the clone turned to water and fell down on her, two more chains came out from her hip. Shooting out to the water's edge, they planted themselves into the earth, and by pulling them back to her, Hinoka was able to rapidly propel herself towards the real Zabuza. Clever, using her chakra chains to accelerate her body, Zabuza praised as Hinoka reached the lake and took the chains out of the earth so they wouldn't slow her down. But the man began as the teen flew across the water's surface, coming straight for him. A frontal attack like that won't work on me, Zabuza shouted as he swung his blade down, slicing Hinoka right down the middle as she came within reach of his attack. With his victory evident, Zabuza grinned wildly under the bandages. However, something wasn't right. Time seemed to slow down as his blade passed through her body with ease, as if there was no resistance at all. When she continued to move forward and pass through his body, Zabuza's eyes widened. A genjutsu? The man wondered as the last of Hinoka passed by. When did she? The man was trying to figure out when his sense of danger kicked in. In his line of work, even a split second of hesitation could cost you your life, and so the man leapt away. As he flipped through the air, a truly aggravating sight met his eyes. The danger he senses were the chakra chains coming out of Hinoka's back, which would have run through him had he been there a second longer, but how? Damn it, how did she not die when he sliced through her? How did she pass through him? Is it some kind of ninjutsu? Damn you! Zabuza roared as he landed back on the water. Rushing the girl, he went to swing his large blade at her once more. Even if he had to cute her down 1,000 times over, he'd kill her. Before the Kabikirabocho could make contact with Hinoka a second time, Kakashi had jumped in to block it with a kunai. With water still flowing down his body, Kakashi stared into Zabuza's eyes with his Sharingan. Hinoka, you did good, but it's time you got back to the others. I'll handle it from here, Kakashi told the girl. With a nod, the teen ran around the two Junin and rushed back to the group, her and Zabuza's eyes meeting as she passed by. That's quite the technique she's got. Any normal shinobi would have stained my sword if they'd tried the same thing, Zabuza commented as his sword and Kakashi's kunai scrapped against each other. I'd let you in on the secret, but now isn't the time for ghost stories, Kakashi told the man. After another moment of the two glaring at one another passed, they jumped away as Zabuza put the Kabikirabocho back on his back. As soon as the rogue Kirigakure shinobi landed on the water, he was speeding through hand signs that Kakashi began to copy when he landed. Once finished, the pair called out in unison, "Water style, water dragon jutsu." With the jutsus complete, twin dragons rose from the lake, each one twisting and turning around the other before finally clashing and turning back to water, which rained down on the two shinobi and stirring up the water of the lake. Once more the two combatants clashed sword against kunai as the after effects of their jutsu continued to kick up waves in the lake. Something isn't right, Zabuza thought as he ran through what just happened in his head. The Sharingan can comprehend and replicate the enemy's technique, however, both just you occurred simultaneously. Could he? The man thought to himself. Breaking away again, the two stood opposite one another. Beginning to run in a circle, Zabuza watched as Kakashi followed his every move beat for beat, even coming to a stop at the same time he did and replicating his pose without hesitation. He's not just following, he's moving in the same way at the same time, Tazuna commented as they watched the fight. How's he doing that? How Sasuke? Sakura asked but received no answer from the Uchiha. My movements. It's as if he knows what Zabuza was thinking when Kakashi spoke. What you're going to do next, the silver-haired shinobi finished Zabuza's thought. What? The man questioned with wide eyes as he stared at Kakashi. Is he reading my mind as well? Zabuza wondered. He looks at me with that eye, he thought as he stared into Kakashi's Sharingan. It makes you furious, doesn't it? Kakashi asked. All you're doing is copying me, like a monkey, Zabuza told him as he started on a new set of hand signs. You can't beat me with cheap tricks, I'll crush you. Zabuza and Kakashi said in unison, pissing Zabuza off. When I'm finished with you you'll never open that monkey mouth again. Zabuza yelled. As they continued going through hand signs a figure began to appear behind Kakashi. What is that? Zabuza wondered as it slowly took shape. Eventually the murky figure took his form. It's me? But how? Is it a genjutsu? The man wondered as Kakashi finished his jutsu. Water style. Giant water vortex jutsu. Kakashi called out, stunning Zabuza as a stream of water came out of the lake and formed a ring in front of Kakashi. That ring quickly expanded till it was a giant surge of water that launched out towards Zabuza. Impossible! Zabuza cried out just before the water slammed into him. Carried along in the violent current, Zabuza wondered who Kakashi could use that jutsu first when he was just about to use it. He copies my jutsu before I can even do it. I can't keep up. Zabuza mentally shouted as the vortex ripped through the forest, carrying him with it before finally slamming him into the trunk of a tree and dying down. When the water receded and Zabuza started coughing and gasping for breath, several kunai flew through the air and pierced his arms and legs. In the branches above, Kakashi stared down at the man. You're finished, Kakashi told him. Shakily tilting his head up to look at the silver-haired man, Zabuza asked, how? Can you see into the future? Yes, Kakashi answered as he pulled out another kunai. This is your last battle, ever. Kakashi said, ready to finish the man off when two senbon needles shot through the air and embedded themselves into the rogue shinobi's neck. With stunned expressions, everyone turned to see who launched the sudden attack. Standing on the branch of a nearby tree stood a young woman about the same age as Naruto and the others. She wore a green haori with white trimmings that was held together by a brown sash with a fringed trail that she had wrapped twice around her slim waist. Under that were brown, stripped clothes that covered everything except for her hands and lower legs, with the bottom half of the clothing being very loose and baggy. Her sandals were light brown with green straps. Her long, black hair was gathered into a white bun holder with two locks remaining to frame fair face while bound with metal hair cuffs at the ends. Covering her face was a white mask with curved, red markings over where her mouth would be and having curved slits for her to see out of. On the forehead of the mask was the symbol of Kirigakure etched into the material. Hemhi, you were right. It was his last battle, the new shinobi commented as Zabuza's body laid unmoving on the ground. For a few moments the group just stared at her, a range of emotions running through them. Eventually Kakashi jumped down next to Zabuza's body to check for a pulse. No vital signs, Kakashi confirmed before his attention moved back to the masked shinobi. Thank you. I've been tracking Zabuza for a long time, waiting for this chance to finally take him down, the girl told him with a slight bow. Judging by your mask, I see you're a tracker shinobi from Kirigakure, Kakashi commented. Impressive. You're well informed, the girl said as she straightened back up. Running up closer to the masked girl, Naruto was struggling with what to do. Looking between her and Zabuza several times, his hands clenched into fists. He knew that Kakashi, his mother, the old pervert, they all devoted years of their lives to training before they were as strong as they are, but this girl just shows up and takes Zabuza down with one blow. What is this? Who do you think you are? Naruto shouted as he pointed at the tracker, and for a moment they just stared at one another. Did you hear me? The blonde yelled again when a hand was placed on his shoulder. Turning his head to the side, he saw Hinoka looking at him. Closing her eyes, she shook her head. This wasn't helping. Picking a fight with this person wouldn't benefit anyone. In this world, there are kids younger than you and yet stronger than me, Naruto heard Kakashi say as the man walked towards him. It was a fact hard for someone like Naruto to swallow, someone who desperately wanted to live up to the legacy of his ancestors, but it had to be done. As Naruto agitatedly turned his head to the side, the tracker moved from the branch to Zabuza's body in a swirl of wind and leaves. Lifting the man's body onto her shoulders, she once again turned to Kakashi. Your struggle is over for now. I must deal with the remains. There are many secrets in this body, they must not be allowed to get into the wrong hands. Please excuse me, farewell, she told them before vanishing in another gust of wind. As Hinoka's grip tightened on Naruto's shoulder, Kakashi lowered his headband back over the Sharingan. Turning to the other, we haven't completed our mission yet. We still have to get the bridge builder to his bridge, Kakashi said with more of an upbeat tone. Sorry I caused so much trouble for ya, but you can rest at my house when we get there, Tazuna said with a laugh, feeling like he could walk on air now that Zabuza was dealt with. Okay, let's get a move on, Kakashi said as he turned to continue to Tazuna's house. He barely took a few steps before the strain of the battle took its effect and he collapsed to the ground, causing the others to panic. Opening his eye, the first thing Kakashi saw was the wood plank roof of the room he was put in to rest. Laying in the futon, the man was covered up to his neck. I think I overdid it with my Sharingan, Kakashi thought with a groan. Waking up, huh? Are you alright? Hearing the question, Kakashi glanced over to his side to see a woman with long, black hair, a short-sleeved pink shirt with the ends of the sleeves and collar being red, and a long blue skirt staring down at him. I've been better. It'll be a week before I can move normally, Kakashi told her as he tried to sit up. See? It's better if you don't move, so just lay down, the woman advised with her hands on her hips. After a short moment of staring at the woman, Kakashi agreed and laid back down on the futon, followed shortly by his team and Tazuna walking into the room. Hey look, Kakashi-sensei's up, Naruto commented as they walked into the room. Listen sensei, Sakura began as she sat down next to Kakashi, your Sharingan is amazing, but if it puts that much of a strain on you then maybe it's not worth it. Sorry, Kakashi apologized for overexerting himself. Hey, well, he did take down one of the most powerful shinobi assassins, so we'll be safe for a while, Tazuna commented as he wiped his face with the towel he always carried around his neck. Right, Sakura agreed with a bit of concern in her voice. That girl with the mask, what about her? The pink kid asked. She's from the elite tracking unit of Kirigakure. Those masks are only worn by the most elite shinobi, Kakashi said. What exactly do they do? Sakura then asked. The Anbu Black Ops, also known as the Inferno Squad, destroy all trace of a rogue shinobi's core. The shinobi's body contains many secrets, ninjutsu, chakra, special medicines used on his body. These are the secrets of his village. If his enemies find them, his people will be in grave danger. For instance, if I were to die at the hands of an enemy, he'd try to analyze my Sharingan. In the worst case, my entire jutsu could be stolen and used against the village. It is the sacred duty of the shinobi trackers to prevent this and keep the village secrets safe. If a shinobi betrays their village, the trackers hunt them down, eliminate him, and obliterate every trace of their existence. That's their specialty, Kakashi explained. As the man was explaining, a nagging thought kept pestering him. What is this? If Zabuza is dead, then why do I feel this way? Something's wrong. It's like I missed something, Kakashi thought to himself. Is something wrong? Naruto asked, seeing the look on the man's face. Oh yeah, Kakashi said after being pulled from his thoughts. As I was saying, tracker shinobi deal with the body immediately, on the spot, so there is no room for error, Kakashi told them. Is that really important? Sakura asked. Think about it. Remember what that tracker did with Zabuza's body? The Junin asked. We don't know what he did. I mean, I guess she took it away somewhere, Sakura answered. Exactly, but why? She should have worked on Zabuza right there, as quickly as possible, Kakashi told them. Think about the weapons she used for the takedown. Do you remember what they were? The man asked. Sasuke was the first to answer. Senbon needles. The Uchiha said as he realized what Kakashi was getting at and his eyes widened. Exactly. None of it adds up, Kakashi responded. What are you all yammering about? You demolished that assassin, Tazuna interjected. Here's the truth. Zabuza is still alive, Kakashi said, surprising everyone except for Sasuke and Hinoka. But we saw his body. Naruto reasoned. Kakashi-sensei, you checked him yourself. You said that his heart stopped, Sakura added. His heart did stop, but that was just a temporary state to simulate death. The weapons that tracker used can pierce deeply, but rarely kill unless they hit a vital organ, not in the neck. They're modified from medical needles used in treatments like acupuncture. Trachers are trained to know every detail of the human body. Causing the heart to stop temporarily while keeping the body alive is a simple task for them. First, she carried Zabuza's body away even though it's much heavier than she is. Second, she used senbon, which have a precise effect but are rarely fatal. From these two factors we can conclude that the tracker wasn't trying to kill Zabuza, but save him, Kakashi told them. Come on, you're overthinking this, aren't you? Tazuna asked, not wanting to believe what he was hearing. Encountering suspicion, a shinobi prepares quickly. Hesitation leads to disaster. Every shinobi knows this saying, Kakashi said as his eye darted over to Naruto. By the look on the blonde's face he was exited to hear that Zabuza was alive. Perhaps this time he'll get to show what he can do. So with you out of commission we'll have to rely on Hinoka? Tazuna questioned. The girl may not have fought for long but she certainly held her own. With her skills they should be saw. That's not a preferable position to be in. Hinoka can't sustain a long fight with her level of training, and after rescuing me from the water prison they'll know not to use physical attacks on her. If it came down to a one-on-one fight, I'm not sure she'd be able to protect you, Kakashi bluntly told the bridge builder. Well, if we can't rely on just Hinoka then what are we supposed to do? Sakura asked. After a few chuckles Kakashi told her, just because I have to rest my body doesn't mean I can't train you. This came as a surprise to the Pinkett and she made sure to voice it. Now hold on Kakashi-sensei. A little bit of last-minute training won't prepare us for Zabuza. That may be true, but after that fight Zabuza will undoubtedly need as much time to recover as I do. Between now and then you'll train so that you can better support me while we have a rematch. On top of that, we can expect his accomplice to take part in the fight now that we know they're working together. If you're undertrained then you risk the lives of both yourself and those we're here to protect, Kakashi tells the girl. Right, Naruto exclaims after Kakashi had finished. We'll get stronger and protect the bridge builder. Everything's going to be alright, believe it. The blonde continued with a grin and was immediately followed after by a new voice. I don't believe it and nothing's going to be alright, a young boy standing in the doorway said. The kid wore a green jumpsuit with a yellow shirt and a simple pair of sandals. On his head sat a white bell-shaped hat with two blue stripes on it. He had short spiky brown hair that poked out from under his hat and dark-colored eyes. Gua, Inari, where have you been? Tazuna greeted the boy as he threw his arms out. Welcome back Grandpa, Inari cheered as he rushed over to hug the old man. Walking over to her son Tsunami once more placed her hands on her hips as she stared down at the boy. Inari, that was very rude. These shinobi helped your grandpa and brought him here safely, the woman scolded her son. It's okay, it's okay. I'm rude to them too, Tazuna commented as he patted Inari's head. After taking another long look at the shinobi Inari turned to his mother. Mom, don't you see? These people are all going to die. Gato and his men will come back, find them, and wipe them out. The boy told his mother. What did you say, brat? Naruto questioned as he shot up to his feet. Listen up, do you know what a super shinobi is? That's me only a lot better. This Gato guy is no match for a real hero like me. Naruto told the kid. Ha, there's no such thing as a hero. Inari scoffed as the rim of his hat hid his eyes. You're just full of stupid ideas, the boy said as he raised his head to stare at the blonde. Naruto was about to storm over and get in the kid's face, but Hinoka's hand grabbing the bottom of his jacket quickly put an end to that idea. If you want to stay alive you should go back where you came from, Inari said before he turned to walk away. Inari, wait, where are you going? Tazuna asked the boy. To look out at the ocean. I want to be alone, the boy answered before leaving the room. Turning to their quests, Tazuna apologized for Inari's behavior. A little later and Naruto was making his way upstairs. He didn't care if the kid was the client's grandson, he was going to knock some sense into him. Once he got to the second floor and started to make his way down the hall, the blonde began to hear something he hadn't expected, the sound of someone crying. Approaching Inari's room, Naruto peeked in through the slightly opened door. What he saw was Inari sitting on the wooden desk in front of his window that looked over the ocean. In his hands was a small photo frame with a picture of a man that looked to have been torn from a larger image. As tears ran down his face and dropped onto the frame, Inari softly cried out for his father. Seeing this, the anger Naruto had felt moment earlier just washed away. Lowering his head, the blonde just turned and headed back down the hall. However, he was not the only one to overhear Inari's sadness. Above the boy's window, looking out at the vast ocean, Hinoka sat on the roof with her arms wrapped around her knees. This land has lost so much. We have to help them, the red-haired woman thought as buried her face in her knees. She was powerless once to stop a horrible evil from destroying so many innocent lives. She didn't want to see something like that ever happen again. Later that day had Kakashi walking around with the aid of crutches. And with his ability to walk around, the man had led his 3 students out into the woods. Alright, training begins now, Kakashi told the 3 after he'd found a suitable location. First, we will begin with a review of chakra, a shinobi's basic source of power. Understanding chakra is essential, Kakashi told them. We know that, Sasuke told the man, finding an explanation unnecessary. Yeah, mom drills it into my head all the time, Naruto told the man as he crossed his arms over his chest. Is that so? Kakashi asked them. Then surely you're already aware of the tree climbing exercise, correct? The man questioned. This is where the 2 of them faltered. The tree climbing exercise? Naruto questioned while Sasuke turned his head with a humph. Despite being from 2 historically powerful clans, the pair had yet to enter into more advanced chakra training. Aside from the leaf exercise all academy students are shown, it doesn't seem like they've even touched the subject. This should make the fact that they can use more advanced jutsu such as shadow clones or the fireball jutsu even more impressive, but perhaps it should be chalked up to luck. When performing a jutsu, one combines both their physical energy and their spiritual energy. Each jutsu requires a different mix of proportions to work. Up till now you've only been guessing. Even if you produce a lot of chakra, if you can't balance and control it, it's all worthless. Either the just you won't work or it'll just be a joke. You waste so much energy that way and then you're out of chakra and you can't fight at all. You're just a target, Kakashi explained. So how do we fix that? Naruto asked. Train so hard that controlling your chakra becomes second nature, Kakashi tells them. So what do we have to do? The pink kid asked. Simple, climb a tree, Kakashi answered with a smile. Obviously this was a surprise for the genin as they questioned what he told them. Well, there is one catch. You're not allowed to use your hands, the man told them. What? You're kidding, Sakura commented after hearing that. Am I? Let's see, Kakashi responded as he turned and walked towards the closest tree. Before the 3's very eyes, the man walked straight up the truck as if he was strolling down the tree, even coming to stand upside down on one of the branches. Well, you get the idea. Focus your chakra towards the soles of your feet and use it to connect to the tree. This is one way to apply the power of chakra, Kakashi explained. What a minute, Sakura called out. That's a nice trick, sensei. But how is it going to help us fight Zabuza? The pink kid asked. It's the only way to fight him, Sakura, Kakashi quickly responded. That's the whole point of this training. First you'll learn to focus a precise amount of chakra to a precise point in the body. This type of climbing requires a subtle mix of physical and spiritual energy, and the bottom of the feet are the most difficult to focus chakra to. Are you getting the picture? If you can master this, then you will be able to master any jutsu. Kakashi told them before adding at the end, well, theoretically. The second point is to maintain chakra levels. In battle it's even harder to maintain and control chakra levels, a deadly mistake. To avoid this, maintaining chakra must become second nature. Effortless, the man told them. Well, I could go on all day, but that won't advance your skills now, will it? You need to apply the power of chakra, through training, Kakashi said as he pulled out 3 kunai and tossed them to his students' feet. Use the kunai to mark the tree at the highest point you can climb, without using your hands. Then try to get past that mark the next time, and the next. At first you'll need to run at the tree so your momentum will take you as high as possible, until you get used to it. Ready? Kakashi instructed them. Elsewhere, among the islands that make up Wave, a large cone-shaped building was located among many large trees. This building was Gato's main hub for his illegal activities within this small island nation. It was here that Zabuza was recovering. Sitting beside his bed, Haku watched over her master, her face no longer hidden behind her mask. She had delicate features and deep, caring brown eyes. Hearing the doors creak open, the girl looked over her shoulder to see Gato stroll into the room accompanied by 2 of his thugs. Both of them claimed to have had samurai training in the past and both of them lacked any honor. Some Junin, the unbeatable shinobi, just got beat. Limping back home like some pathetic has-been, the corrupt businessman remarked. Demon of the hidden mist, ha ha ha, more like coward of the hidden mist, the short man insulted. Hearing this, Haku stood up, the wooden chair she'd been sitting in clattering against the stone floor as Gato's thugs reached for their blades. Drawing swords? Haku asked as she watched the men from over her shoulder. Honestly, it was more amusing than anything else. Hang on a minute, Gato instructed his men as he walked by them. Alright, let's hear what you have to say about this fiasco, Gato said as he walked up to Zabuza's bed. And don't play possum. I know you can talk, Gato said as he reached out for the man, only to wince in pain when Haku grabbed hold of his arm. Keep your filthy hands off of him. Haku lowly growled out as she glared daggers at the man and squeezed just a bit harder. Ah, you're gonna break it, the man shouted. Seeing the guy who writes their checks in danger, the two samurai thugs drew their swords and rushed the girl. However, they were unprepared for her speed and skill as they were quickly disarmed and had the tips of their own blades brushing up against their throats. Don't push me, I'm in a really foul mood, Haku warned before tossing the swords to the other side of the room. As Gato and his men backed off towards the door, he made one last warning. One chance, that's it. If you fail this time, I'll cut you off and then there'll be no one left to cover for you, the man yelled before leaving with his hired men. Haku, that wasn't necessary, Zabuza told the teen once they were alone. Under the blanket he held a kunai in his hand, having been fully prepared to plunge it into Gato's throat. Perhaps, but it's too early to take out Gato, Haku argued. He's still our best cover. Think about it, the murders would draw their attention. Then they'd be after us again, Haku said, referring to actual tracker shinobi from Kirigakure. We need restraint, the girl told him with a smile. Right, Zabuza reluctantly agreed as he closed his eyes and tried to rest. The moment Gato no longer served a purpose, he was a dead man. Tsunami was a stay-at-home mother. She tended to the house, prepared everyone's meals, and made sure her son and grandfather looked presentable before they went out in public. Today, she had nothing to do. It was actually quite common. There was only so much she could clean or rearrange before having nothing to do. She considered getting a job in the past, but Inari was still a bit too young for her to comfortably leave him alone all day. Then you had the fact that even if she got a job, it'd never pay enough to make the daily trip to the town worth it. She'd picked up a few hobbies over the years such as gardening and origami to whittle away the hours, but today she was fighting off boredom thanks to the blonde shinobi staying in her house. Like everyone, she had heard the tales of shinobi who could breath fire or scale walls and toss boulders 5 times their size, but it still took her by surprise when Naruto made a duplicate of himself before heading out with his team. Hinoka and the clone had then set up a space inside the house where they could work. As Tsunami had walked around the house looking for something to do, she'd keep walking by the room they were in, and every time she'd see that more and more scrolls and ink bottles had piled up around them. After hours of letting her curiosity building up to a boil, Tsunami finally had enough. After making a pot of tea to use as an excuse, the woman made her way over to the pair. Wow, this is really good, Naruto complimented after taking a sip of the tea Tsunami brewed. The blonde hadn't been expecting the woman to offer them something to drink like this, but he couldn't say he was unhappy with it. Thank you. We don't have much to work with, so I try to make the most of it, Tsunami told him as she poured her own cup, having joined the pair in sitting on the floor. Looking around them, Tsunami once more had her attention drawn to the scrolls laying on the floor. Looking closely, she could tell that, despite the weird design, every scroll seemed to have the same design on it. Reaching over, Tsunami picked one up. The first thing she noticed about it was how warm the paper was. Why was it so warm? What have you been working on? The woman asked as she ran a finger over the dried ink. Looking from Tsunami's face, to the scroll in her hands, and then back up to her face as he leaned back on his hands, Naruto figured it wouldn't hurt to tell her. Funjutsu practice, Naruto told the woman. Having expected the confused look she gave him, Naruto gave her a wide grin and elaborated. Funjutsu is a form of shinobi art that uses written formulas, kanji, and other symbols to perform some kind of action. The most common use for funjutsu is to seal an object into another object. Like putting a sleeping bag inside a scroll. The explanation sounded unbelievable to her, but Tsunami understood what the blonde was saying. "So you're learning how to use funjutsu then?" the woman asked with a smile. Naruto gave her a nod before saying, "Yeah, mom's had me memorize at least one seal a week for about a year now. Before that it was daily calligraphy lessons that she had me do since I was just a kid." "That's quite a lot for someone your age," Tsunami commented. When she was his age she didn't have the slightest idea what she wanted out of life. Hell, she was just barely twice his age and she still didn't quite know what she wanted. "You think?" Naruto asked as he sat up straight. Everyone he knew that was around his age put in a lot of work. "Oh yes, when I was your age I just spent every day wandering around town getting free handouts from boys who thought I looked pretty. I just thought of hard work as being something for older people, something I didn't have to worry about until I was an adult," the woman admitted, placing the scroll in her lap and tilting her head back to stare at the ceiling as she reminisced about her youth. Letting out a sigh as she closed her eyes she added, "Sometimes I wonder how father put up with me." Grabbing his cup Naruto brought it up and took another sip. Holding his cup a few inches below his chin Naruto commented with a big grin, "Well, you are petty." While Naruto had meant it as a harmless compliment, hearing someone half her age call her pretty was quite the surprise. With flushed cheeks Tsunami began to chuckle nervously, "Oh come on now. You don't need to flatter an old woman like me. But it's true. You're really pretty," Naruto told her and watched with a bit of confusion as more of Tsunami's face turned red. She'd never admit it, but having Naruto call her pretty was quite the ego boost, even if it was embarrassing. Looking to her other side Tsunami worried about how she must look right now. Even without looking in a mirror she knew her face was completely red after that. Though, her embarrassment was soon forgotten when she noticed that Hinoka was holding her ceramic cup with both hands and staring down at her own reflection. The look on the girl's face was, to best describe it, odd. "Is something wrong?" Tsunami asked, her face returning to its normal hue. Widening her eyes Hinoka's head jerked up to look at Tsunami. Shaking her head enough for her bangs to fly about her face Hinoka gave the woman a big smile before drinking from her cup. Lowering the cup Hinoka let out a blissful sigh. It really was delicious. Tsunami was still a little concerned with the look she saw on Hinoka, but seeing her act like this put a smile back on her face as she chuckled ever so slightly. "You don't talk too much, do you?" the woman offhandedly remarked, finding it cute in a way. Hearing her say that Hinoka looked at Tsunami for a moment before a thoughtful look spread across her face. Looking straight ahead at Naruto the girl looked him in the eyes as she gave him a sharp nod. It took Naruto a moment to understand what she was trying to say, but after living with her for months now he was positive he knew what she was thinking. "Are you sure? You can't change your mind once I tell her?" Naruto asked the girl to make sure she was serious about this. Hinoka's response was another nod. Seeing their interaction Tsunami couldn't help her curiosity. "Tell me what?" the woman asked. "Everyone has their secrets, but honestly, you can't just tease her like that and expect her not to ask." Both of them turned towards Tsunami and stared at her intently. If Tsunami was honest with herself, it was a bit off-putting. "Tell me, are you scared of ghosts?" Naruto eventually asked. "Ghosts?" They wanted to know if she was scared of ghosts? Blinking in confusion Tsunami responded, "No. I can't say I was ever really scared of ghosts." "Really, what are they trying to get at with this? If they were trying to pull some prank then it's not particularly funny." After a moment Naruto nodded his head with a, "Right." Placing his hands on his folded legs Naruto looked Tsunami squarely in the eye and told her, "Please don't freak out, but Hinoka is a ghost." For a few long moments not a sound passed between the three until PHFF. Ha 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 ha. Tsunami tried to hold back her laughter but at the end she failed horribly. This quiet girl sitting within an arm's reach was supposed to be a ghost? Tsunami just couldn't wrap her mind around it. Seriously, who ever heard of a ghost just walking around in broad daylight like any normal person? "Hey, I'm being serious here," Naruto blurted out, both him and Hinoka having become annoyed at seeing Tsunami burst into laughter. "I am sorry. I just can't help myself." Tsunami apologized, threatening to fall over as her sides started to hurt from the laughter. As Naruto crossed his arms and started grumbling Hinoka let out a sigh as her hand came up to rest on her forehead and for her fingers to partially run through her hair. As she thought about it the corners of her lips curved upward. At least it was better than fear. "Oh okay. I think I'm good now," Tsunami said after a few more minutes of laughing, wiping a tear from her eye as she sat up straight again. Okay, let's assume I believe you. Hinoka here is a ghost and that means what, exactly? The woman questioned. Ah, well, Naruto began as his hand came up to scratch at his cheek. Since she was a ghost, there are some differences between her and a living person. For one example, since she doesn't have a body, she doesn't necessarily need to sleep, so most nights she's up wandering around the house or walking through the streets to keep her mind occupied. Though, right now the biggest thing Tsunami should know would probably be, it's hard for her to talk, Naruto told the woman. Hard to talk? Why would being a ghost make it hard for her to talk? Tsunami asked. She's heard plenty of ghost stories that talked about all the creepy things the spirits would say. I think it's like this. You and I have physical bodies, so we don't have to put a lot of energy into talking because we have, what was it called? Alright, we have vocal cords to help us talk. Hinoka doesn't have a physical body, so normal things we do without even thinking about it, like talking, Hinoka has to do with spiritual energy, making it a lot harder, Naruto explained, doing his best to recall what Tsunade had told them after she had given Hinoka a checkup. Did that make any sense? The blonde then added after a moment. I think I get it, Tsunami responded. She still had no idea if they were telling the truth, but that didn't really matter. Turning to Hinoka, Tsunami leaned in and grabbed hold of the girl's hands, surprising her at the sudden contact. Bringing their hands up with Hinoka's being held inside of Tsunami's, the woman told her, "Ghost or not, you helped my father return home safely. You're welcome here, always." Hearing Tsunami's words, Hinoka's eyes widened a bit more as her lips parted slightly. Are you really going to stay here? Even now that the ultimate summoning beast is gone? An image from that fateful day came to the foreground of Hinoka's mind. On that day, Kushina had held out her hand for Hinoka to take, the long red hair she'd had in a ponytail flowing freely in the wind and that wide grin playing across her face. Before that day, Hinoka had spent so much time alone and hopeless, every day seemed to blend into one another. With a wide smile, Hinoka practically shined in that moment as Tsunami held her hands between them. I don't want another D-rank mission. The usual quiet of the Hokage Tower was shattered on this morning. Standing in front of the Hokage's desk, Amy had a very annoyed look on her face with her arms crossed and tapping her right arm with her left index finger. Don't raise your voice like that in front of Lord Hokage. Amos-sensei yelled at her as she and Amos' teammates stood a few paces behind her. Her sensei was a reasonably attractive woman, a bit short for her age but pretty. Her dark brown hair came down to her chin and did a wonderful job framing her rounded face. Her green eyes at the moment were glaring at her student. Like most Junin of the village, she wore a standard flax jacket, however beneath that she wore a dark blue dress that reached down past her knees with a slit on the left side that came up to her hip, and the sleeves were long and loose. Visible beneath the slit in her dress were the tight-fitting black shorts she wore under chainmail that extended to just above her knee. The dark blue sandals she wore were open and had a lot of straps. But Sensei Tilda, Amy whined as she turned at the hip to look at the woman. We've been shinobi for a year now and we've only done lame-ass D-rank missions. Naruto was graduated less than a month ago and his team's already out on a C-rank mission. How is that fair? Amy reasoned, her back arched forward slightly with clenched hands raised up to her sides. That was Kakashi's decision regarding his team. I'm not him, and I say you're still not ready for a C-rank mission. Ishiko told the girl. Here we go again, Kasumi commented, crossing her arms over her borderline C-cup S. Kasumi was a girl with an orange afro and a person who always seemed to have her eyes closed despite her seeing everything just fine. Unlike her friend and sensei, she wore her headband around her neck, keeping it loose so it didn't choke her while not so loose that it'd slip over her head while she was jumping around. She wore a purple cloth vest over a faded yellow shirt with long, loose sleeves and a pair of black shorts reaching her knees. Just let them argue. No point in either of us jumping in, Fuki said, getting a nod from her orange-haired friend. Fuki had short and very wild, spiky brown hair. Her dark eyes were half-lidded and matched the rest of her disinterested expression that more often than not put people off unintentionally. With a gray scarf wrapped around her neck, Fuki had her headband tied around her upper right arm. Her shirt was yellow with short, teal sleeves, and her pants that reached down to her standard shinobi sandals were a light tan color. If we're not ready then it's because you never let us do anything. Amy yelled back at her sensei. Why you? Ishiko growled out as her arms came up, her hands threatening to ball into fists. Don't you get it? Being a shinobi is extremely dangerous. If you're not ready for a mission then let someone who is take it so you don't run off to an early grave. Ishiko yelled at the teen. Amy was about to yell at the woman again when something poked her back and nearly made her jump out of her skin. Taking a small jump forward, Amy turned around to see the Hokage holding out a mission scroll with a large C written on it. This should be within your skill level, the old man said with a warm smile. His smile only grew when he saw the girl's face light up as she quickly took the scroll from him. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Amy repeated while grinning like a madman. Lord Hokage? Ishiko questioned in disbelief. Ishiko, the old man addressed and watched as the woman stood up straight. It is true that we sort missions the way we do in part to protect our less skilled shinobi, but if they never push themselves then they'll never grow, Hiruzen said. Yes Lord Hokage, I understand. Ishiko responded. If that's all then we'll be leaving, the woman told him, feeling a bit awkward now that she was outruled. With the man dismissing them the group went to leave. Ishiko held the door open as her students left the room. Amy was the last to go and before she did she turned back to the Hokage, scroll in hand. Thanks again old man. When we get back I'll treat you to some dumplings. The teen told Hiruzen, getting an annoyed look from her sensei. Hee, I'm already looking forward to it, Hiruzen told her with a chuckle as the door closed behind them. Even at his age he could still hear Ishiko reprimanding Amy for speaking so casually to the village leader like that as they walked down the hall. So what's this mission about anyway? Fuki asked now that the village gates were getting farther and farther behind them, each of them carrying the standard packs save for Kasumi who had a large shuriken strapped to her back with two smaller packs strapped to her hip. We're to travel to a farming village little over half a day from Konoha. According to the report they've been harassed by wild hogs for the past few months, suffering repeated crop loss and damage to property. Our mission is to take care of these hogs, Ishiko told them. We're pest control? Kasumi questioned as she tilted her head slightly to the side. If I wanted to do that I would have gone to work with my cousin, not spend my life becoming a shinobi, the teen complained. Don't blame me. Am's the one who insisted we take on AC rank mission, Ishiko commented, directing the girl's growing annoyance at the purple-haired member of the team. Feeling Kasumi and Fuki's eyes fall on her, Amy looked off into the forest with a nervous sweat. So the mission's shit, whatever. It's a step in the right direction at least. Amy boldly declared as her head jerked back forward. Besides, can you honestly say this is any worse than picking weeds or picking up trash? The girl asked as she looked over at her friends. Taking a moment to think about it the two had to admit, yeah, I guess, fair point. Word had been sent ahead of them via messenger hawk that a shinobi team had been sent out to handle the mission, and so many of the villagers were waiting for the group on the outskirts of the village. Shinobi of Konoha, welcome to our village, a man whose black hair was just starting to turn gray greeted as he stepped forward from the rest of the villagers. Coming to a stop in front of the man, Ishiko stretched out her arm to shake his hand. As the woman was about to speak, Fuki beat her to it. This is quite the welcoming party you got here. The teen commented as she eyed up the villagers with her right hand resting on her hips. Coming to the front of the group, a tall man with a chiseled chin, short black hair, and a muscular body built from hours of work spent on the farm every day commented, well, when our livelihoods rest in your hands you better believe we'll be out here to welcome you with open arms. Fuki was saying when Ishiko slid in front of her with hearts in her eyes. Of course, when we heard the plight your village was suffering through we couldn't help but accept the request. Ishiko gushed, her hands clasped together in front of her chest as she stared into the man's amber eyes. Behind her, her genin team just rolled their eyes at the woman's antics. With Ishiko distracted, Kasumi stepped forward to talk to the man who'd originally stepped forward from the other villagers. Can you tell us more about the wild boars? The girl asked. Yes, the wild boars, the man began with a slight nod. It's not unusual for them to visit our village every year from the nearby mountains. Usually we can just set up a few traps to capture them and be done with it, but this year we had set up the traps like always, but when we went to check them the next morning they'd been torn apart, left as nothing more than heaps of twisted metal, the man explained. Sounds like that's take some serious strength, and you say all of the traps were like that? Kasumi asked as she folded her left arm under her chest and rubbed her chin with her right hand. Not all, we still have a few traps left but none of them have captured anything this year, the man told her. I see, Kasumi murmured. To be able to tear apart a metal cage, are they dealing with a shinobi here? Don't worry, we'll have this all sorted out before you know it. Amy proclaimed with a wide grin as she jabbed her left thumb into her own chest. Yeah, if we can't catch them with a trap we'll just track them down and beat them into submission with our bare hands. Fuki exclaimed as she slammed her fist into her open palm. Right, Kasumi agreed with a confident nod. After hearing these two say something like that they better not fail. They wouldn't want to look like idiots now, would they? As night fell, Amy headed out to the fields north of the village while Kasumi headed west and Fuki patrolled along the forests that stretched up the mountains to the east. Their sensei stayed in the village to hit on the hunk from earlier or keep an eye out for any wild hog that may end up in town. Kasumi had requested that they use the remaining traps and now they were patrolling their areas, making sure to regularly check the traps within those areas. Coming to land on one of the 3 traps set up in her area, Amy glanced down to see a hog soundly trapped behind bars, having been lured in by the fruit left inside as bait. Bringing her hand up to her headset, Amy radioed her teammates, I've got one over here. That makes what, 4 now? Yeah, 1 over by me and 2 over with Fuki. Amy heard Kasumi's voice over the communicator. So when does this get interesting? The most exciting thing I've seen all night is a snot bubble one of the hogs blew. Fuki's voice rang in their ears. Sitting down on the cage, Amy let her legs hang over the side as she let out a sigh. Yeah, it's pretty boring. Amy admitted. This wasn't at all what she had in mind when she asked for a C-rank mission. Well, if we pull this off then maybe we'll start getting better missions, the team said to her friends. We can only hope, Kasumi said. Hope my ass. If we had to go through another month of garbage duty I'm going to lose my... Fuki was beginning a rant when she just stopped talking. Curious, Amy asked through the radio. What is it? Did something happen? I think I know what broke the cages, Fuki said as sat on a tree branch that overlooked the grassy field between the forest and the village. What is it? What do you see? Kasumi asked. Well, Fuki began as she stared down at a wild boar 4 times her size and covered in scars. The beast grunted and stared up at her with its single eye, its front right hoof digging into the ground as it dared her to come down. Just get over here as fast as you can. We got a fight on our hands, Fuki told them. Just tell us what you say, Kasumi was telling the girl when Fuki turned off the communicator. Standing up, the girl cracked her knuckles. I've been waiting for a good fight for a long time. You better not disappoint me, Fuki told the boar as she glared back at it. Jumping through the trees, Amy was going as quickly as she could to reach her friend. Amy, the girl heard from below. Looking down, she saw Kasumi running along the ground. We should be close to Fuki now, Amy said as she hopped down to run next to Kasumi. I swear, if she's gotten in over her head I'll kick her ass myself after this is over. Amy hissed through gritted teeth. They were a team, they were supposed to work together. Besides, if Fuki thinks she can keep all of the excitement to herself, she's got another thing coming. Let's just focus on helping her first, Kasumi told her friend. Hearing a commotion up ahead, the two made a direct path for it. Jumping out of the brush, Amy and Kasumi came to a small clearing. A few feet in front of them stood Fuki. What took you so long? Fuki asked through deep breaths, her back still turned to the two. Stop trying to act cool, dumbass, Amy shouted, pointing her finger at the girl. Dropping her stance slightly, Fuki looked over her shoulder. Come on. Can't even give me a break once, can ya? You got that right, Amy told her with a grin. Have your moment some other time, Kasumi told the pair as she stepped forward, her hand reaching up to grab the large shuriken on her back. We've got a mission to complete and this guy's standing in our way, the girl said as she stared down the giant boar standing on the other edge of the clearing, still ready to go. What the hell? Why is that thing so huge? Amy yelled, having been the last one to notice it. I don't know, but it's put my taijutsu to its limits. No matter how many kicks or punches I land, it just keeps charging forward, Fuki told them. No one said you had to fight alone, Amy told the girl as she came up to stand by her so that the 3 of them were lined up now. That's right, we're a team and we fight as one, Kasumi said. Yeah, sorry about that. I just couldn't resist the chance for a real fight, Fuki apologized. But I think I've had a long enough break. Ready to go when you are, the girl said as rolled her shoulders. Good, then I'll cover the two of you like usual, Kasumi told them, watching as the boar waited for their move. As soon as her two friends agreed, Kasumi leapt into the air. Taking the shuriken off her back, Kasumi spun around mid-air before letting the weapon fly from her hands and towards the boar. Quickly running through hand signs, the girl called out, "Ninja art! Shadow shuriken jutsu!" And in an instant the single weapon became 5 large projectiles sailing for the wild animal. Seeing the attack coming, the boar jerked its head to the side and pierced one of the many trees with its tusks. Using brute strength, the animal uprooted the tree and pulled it down to swat away one of the shuriken, catch 3 of them with the trunk, and allowed the last to harmlessly sail past it. Coming in from the side, Amy rushed the beast with a kunai in hand. As the girl approached, the boar jerked to the side, fully prepared to impale the teen on its tusk when she jumped back. "Not so fast, big guy," Amy taunted with a grin as she avoided the attack. With its lone eye scanning the area, the wild hog wondered what happened to the other girl, the one it was fighting earlier. From below, the ground began to crack, and before the boar had time to react, Fuki came out, fist soaring up to collide with the wild hog's chin. Rearing up on its hind legs, the pissed hog was going to slam its front hooves down and crush this girl. "Heavy bastard, aren't ya?" Fuki commented, seeing as the animal was still on the ground after that punch. "Figures," she said with a smirk as she twisted around so she was on all 4 with her back turned to the hog. "Just get in the air already," Fuki shouted as she mule kicked the hog's stomach. With her powerful kick, the wild hog was sent into the air. As it was planning out how it was going to eviscerate these brats, when it landed, the hog noticed something glimmer in the moonlight next to it. "Got ya," Kasumi whispered as she knelt down on a nearby branch. Yanking her arms up and over her head, the wire she had wrapped around her fists yanked the shuriken that had went past the boar out of the bushes and sending it straight into the hog's back. As the beast fell back to the ground, the 3 genin jumped out into the open to observe their work. "The village should be able to tend to their fields without issue now," Kasumi commented. "Yeah, looks like our work's over," Fuki said with a big grin, and she rested the back of her hands on her hips. Walking over, Amy poked the wild hog's body with her foot. "Who knew a pig could cause so much trouble?" the girl said with a smirk. With another poke from Amy, however, the hog's eyes shot open, freaking the 3 out. With a loud roar, the boar pushed itself up to its feet and knocked the 3 of them back. After sliding to the edge of the clearing, Amy sat up to see the large animal standing in the center with Kasumi's shuriken lodged in its back, blood pouring slowly down its sides. "Damn it," Amy cursed as she shakily got back to her feet. "If you think," she began as the boar glared at her and gave a loud snort that kicked up dust. "If you think I'll let my first C-rank mission end in failure because of some fat pig, you're insane," Amy yelled as she ran right at the animal, regardless of her friends telling her to calm down. Reaching into her pouch, Amy yanked out her water jug. Opening the container, she tossed the jug into the air. "Water style. Pellet storm jutsu," the girl called out after a few hand signs, and caused the water that flew out of her jug to form into small droplets and pelt the boar. The hog just shook the attack off and charged the girl. With a roar, the beast thrust its tusks at the girl, but was surprised when she caught them in her arms as her feet came off the ground and pressed against its snout. "Don't take me lightly," Amy told the beast as she flipped over its head with a quick turn so that she came to sit on its neck. Wrapping her legs around the animal's thick neck as best she could to prevent herself from being thrown off, Amy began another set of hand signs. "Lighting style. Static palm jutsu," the teen cried out, her palms surging with sparks of electricity. Slamming her hands into the boar's wet fur, Amy began to fry the animal, and to a degree herself, as the thing's sequels of pain echoed through the forest. After a few minutes of this, the electricity came to a stop and the boar collapsed to the ground, with Amy soon tumbling off of it. "Amy," the girl's 2 friends called out as they rushed over to her. "Amy, are you alright?" Kasumi asked as her and Fuki came to kneel next to their purple-haired friend. "I will be, once my head stops throbbing," Amy responded as one last spark arched between the ends of her hair. The next morning had the team standing outside the village, this time with the town folk seeing them off. "Do take care on your way back," the man with graying hair told them. "We wouldn't want our heroes getting hurt," the handsome man from yesterday said with a big grin, his wife standing next to him with their 3-year-old son. "Yes, "We'll be just fine," Ishiko said with a big smile. Right up to the point she turned around to head back to Konoha and her tears started again. Waving goodbye, the three genin quickly followed after their sensei with a little extra company. "You're really going to keep that thing, huh?" Kasumi said to Fuki as she walked next to the boar that fought the night before. After they'd gone back to the village to tell them what had happened, they found that the thing had stumbled its way after them before collapsing again just outside the village. Fuki had taken pity on it and patched it up the best she could, hence the many rolls of bandages wrapped around the thing's torso. "Of course, it's hard to find a good fighter like this guy," Fuki happily cheered as she rode on its neck. "Besides, I think he likes me," the girl said as she leaned forward and patted the coarse hair on Boar's head, chuckling when it let out a happy snort. "Ah, whatever. It's not like it's going to be living in my house," Kasumi responded as she turned her head forward again. That is, till she notices the expression Amy had on her face. "What's with that look? Don't tell me you're that happy just because we completed the mission," Kasumi asked her friend with a smirk. "Yeah, you've been grinning from ear to ear since this morning," Fuki added. Turning her head to her friends, Amy told them, "Are you kidding? Naruto's going to love it when he hears about this. Hell, I bet he was bored out of his mind looking after that bridge builder guy." Turning to each other, Kasumi and Fuki shared a look before giggling. "Hey, what are you laughing at?" Amy questioned as her face started to turn red. "Nothing, honestly," Kasumi waved off as Fuki quickly followed up with essentially the same thing. As Amy continued to pester her friends about what was so amusing, Ishiko led the group and listened in on their conversation. To be young and in love, such a beautiful thing, the woman thought. Both happy for her student and miserable because she didn't have her luck when it came to romance. "Good morning, everyone," Sakura greeted as she walked into the dining room with a yawn quickly following said greeting. The night before, Tazuna had told them about Kaiza, the man who'd traveled to Wave 3 years ago and became not only this land's hero but also a father to Inari. They were also told of his ultimate fate at the hands of Gato's goons after he'd caused trouble for the businessman. His death had been made a public execution as a show of power. All of them had gone to sleep last night with that in mind, but perhaps she let it roll around her mind the most, seeing as she was the last to make it to the table. Even Naruto, who had stumbled his way back to the forest for more training, was helping Tsunami set the table. As Tsunami placed a plate of food on the table, the pink-haired girl thanked her before digging in. As she ate, she started to notice that something was off. Pausing her meal, she glanced around the room and found that it was odd that her blonde teammate was just standing up to the side. "Naruto, you need to eat. After all the training you've been doing, you need to eat. If you don't, you're liable to collapse because your body isn't getting enough energy," Sakura told the blonde. Turning his head towards the girl, Naruto registered that she was talking to him. Since he wasn't particularly paying attention, it took him a minute to put together what she'd just told him. "Oh, well, it wouldn't make much sense for a clone to sit down and eat. Chances are I could pop any second now," the blonde told her. "Clone?" Sakura blinked a few times as she asked. She couldn't believe it. Did Naruto really send a clone back to the house so he could stay out there and train? "If you're a clone, then where's the real Naruto?" Tsunami asked as she brought over a plate she'd prepared for Naruto. Though it seems she'd have to take this plate herself now. He probably spent all night climbing trees. I'd say he was probably dead from chakra exhaustion by now, but if that were the case, his clone would have disappeared with him, Sakura said. "Yeah, that sounds about right," the clone muttered with a quick nod, choosing to ignore the part about chakra exhaustion. "Just because he's alive, that doesn't mean he's okay," Sasuke commented. Getting up, the Uchiha pushed his chair in before heading for the front door. When Sakura asked where he was going, the boy responded with, "Someone's got to make sure he hasn't gotten himself hurt." "Ah, hold on a moment," Tsunami told the young Uchiha as she placed her untouched plate of food on the table and then quickly walked over to his side. "I'll come too. The walk should be good for me," Tsunami said as Sasuke looked up at her with an odd look. Though the Uchiha just shrugged his shoulders and let the woman accompany him. Over the past few days, it had felt like a breath of fresh air having Naruto around the house. Whenever she'd be confronted with a difficult task, he'd be there to lend her a hand, and when everything was done, she could just sit around and talk with him and Hinoka about everything and nothing for hours. The least she could do was take a little stroll to see if he was okay. Near the location Team 7 had been training a young woman with long, beautiful black hair sat gathering herbs. She wore a light pink, sleeveless kimono with darker pink trimmings, a black spiral pattern dotted around the garment, and holding it together with an off-white obi. As she busied herself, a small brown and white bird swooped down and landed on her left shoulder. She smiled at the small creature, but soon it left its temporary perch. Watching with some amusement as the bird fluttered off, the girl was surprised when its path led her eyes to quite the curious sight. Further away laid a blonde teen passed out in the grass and covered in more of those birds as the morning sun illuminated the forest floor. It didn't take long for a look of recognition to pass through her eyes as she stared at the boy. The blonde laying over there was the same blonde who confronted her after she'd put Zabuza into a death-like state. Getting up, Haku steadily made her way over to the sleeping teen. Coming to a stop next to him, she contemplated what she should do. No was the perfect opportunity to eliminate one of her master's adversaries, while he was sleeping and helpless. Her hand guided her as she knelt down next to him, but just as she was about to wrap it around his neck, she stopped. "You'll catch cold if you sleep here. Wake up," Haku softly spoke as her hand moved over to rock his shoulder. Cracking his eyes open, Naruto pushed himself up into a sitting position. "Who the heck are you?" a still sleep-addled Naruto questioned. Once his mind caught up with his body, the boy realized that he'd been woken up by a pretty girl, and with the faintest of blushes he asked, I mean, where did you come from? You know, what are you doing out here and all that?" "I'm gathering herbs," Haku told him. "Herbs?" the blonde questioned. "That's right," Haku told him with a warm smile. "They're for treating illnesses and healing wounds," Haku told him. "That's so?" Naruto thought aloud. After a moment of the thought, he looked back at the girl and asked, "You think I could help?" At first Haku was surprised by the offer, but she quickly accepted his help with a gentle smile. For a while they searched the small clearing, silently enjoying one another's company as the basket Haku brought with her slowly filled up. Every now and then Haku would look up from the grass and glance over at Naruto. She couldn't quite put her finger on it, but just being near him like this sent a warm feeling through her body, as if she were wrapped tightly in a thick blanket on a cold and windy night. Was it because she was spending time with someone her own age, as if she were a normal person? Well, regardless of the reason, she was content with enjoying this feeling while she could. At some point Naruto turned to Haku and sat down. "You start work pretty early," the blonde comment zero. Having noticed him face her, Haku had paused in her own herb gathering and waited to see what the blonde wanted. After hearing his comment, she told him, "I like it early. It's calm, but I didn't think I'd find anyone sleeping out here in the woods." I'm training," the blonde happily told her. Given the boy's enthusiasm, Haku remained silent for a moment as she stared at him with slightly widened eyes. Eventually the girl continued the conversation, asking, "I take it you're a shinobi? Because I noticed that headband you're wearing, or are you just making a fashion statement?" "You noticed that? Alright," Naruto cheered. Pointing a thumb at his headband, the blonde continued, "Only a super cool shinobi can wear these." "Oh really? I see, that's very impressive," Haku said, getting a big smile from the blonde as her rubbed the back of his head and chuckled happily at the compliment. "But," Haku began as her head lowered and she looked off to the side. "Does that mean you're training for something dangerous?" the girl asked. "Kind of, but it's more about just getting stronger," Naruto responded. Looking back to the blonde, Haku asked, "You look pretty strong now, isn't that enough?" No, I need to get stronger and stronger, and I need to keep practicing," Naruto quickly told her. "How so? Why is it so important?" Haku asked. She wanted to know what his reasoning was, if it was like hers or not. Hearing her question, Naruto's big grin slowly turned into a gentle smile. He'd proclaimed that he'd become stronger numerous times in his life, but hardly anyone ever asked why he wanted to become strong. Even with his family and friends, they'd usually just help him out without ever asking why. It felt oddly nice hearing her ask that. "There's a lot I have to live up to be strong enough to bear the name Uzumaki, but..." Naruto was telling her as he paused to think about his loved ones, his mother, Amy, Hinoka, Old Man Hokage, Auntie Makoto and Sasuke, Sakura and Kakashi, Tsunade and Shizune, hell, even the old pervert. Thinking about all of them, it was easy for Naruto to look Haku in the eye and say, "Above all else, I want to protect those I love." So that these peaceful days never have to end, if I'm to do that I need to become stronger. Hearing his reply, Haku gave the blonde a warm smile. Yes, that sounds like a wonderful reason. Never lose that will to protect, and I'm sure you'll become very strong, Haku told him as she reached out to grab the handle of her basket. As she stood up, she saw the blonde grin at her small encouragement. Turning to head back to base, the girl said to him, "Goodbye, we'll meet again sometime." As Haku walked away, Naruto realized something and called out to her, "Hey, wait. I never got your name." "Mine's Naruto Uzumaki." Hearing him, Haku stopped. She debated with herself for a moment on whether or not she should tell him her name, but ultimately decided there was no harm to it. Turning at the waist, she looked back at the blonde and told him, "My name's Haku." Even with Tsunami tagging along, it didn't take too long for Sasuke to reach their training area. The blonde came into view. Both him and Tsunami saw Haku walking towards them. As the girl passed them both, Sasuke and Tsunami glanced over at her. Is she new to the area? Tsunami briefly wondered as she tried and failed to place a name to the girl's face. In a small nation like Wave, it wasn't uncommon for most people to have at least heard of the land's other inhabitants. A pretty girl like that would definitely be well known, if only as eye candy for the local boys. Not dead yet, huh? Sasuke asked with a smirk as him and Tsunami got closer to him. What would go and give you an idea like that? Naruto questioned as he folded his arms while still sitting on the ground. We just wanted to see if you were alright, Tsunami said, spending most of the statement with her head turned to look over her shoulder at Haku's retreating form till turning to face Naruto just before finishing. Spending all night out here by yourself. You had us worried, the woman told him with a smile on her face. Nah, I only came out here because his mother would have killed me if something happened to him, Sasuke commented as he slipped his hands into his pockets. Even if he was worried about this idiot, there's no way in hell he'll just admit it. Geez, thanks, Naruto told him with a bit of annoyance in his words. Seeing this, Tsunami couldn't help but smile even more at the scene. Even if everything went wrong tomorrow, they still had these precious moments now. A little while later, and now it was Sakura and Kakashi's turn to come out looking for the blonde, and at this point Sasuke and Tsunami. As Sakura called out for their teammates and Tsunami, Kakashi kept up with her, only needing a single crutch to get around comfortably at this point. Knowing Naruto, he could be anywhere, and even Sasuke and Tsunami are still out here. I wonder where they are. The Pink Kid wondered as the two of them came to a stop around the area Kakashi brought them for training. As the words left her mouth, both her and Kakashi's senses kicked in and their heads jerked forward to see a kunai sailing through the air. Once the projectile landed in the ground between them, the pair turned their heads upward to see who threw it. Sure enough, high in the treetop was Naruto, and sitting next to him was Tsunami. Right there, high above the ground, the woman sat with her arm hugging the tree trunk next to her. After her and Sasuke found the blonde, the two shinobi went right back to training, neither one of them wanting to fall behind the other. Since there wasn't much to do today, Tsunami stuck around to watch them, marveling at how far they could make it up the tree. At some point, shortly before Kakashi and Sakura arrived, the woman had gotten it in her head that it might be nice to see the world from up there. It took some convincing, even if just a little, to get Naruto to carry her up with him. Despite being scared shitless as Naruto ran up the tree with her in his arms, and even to a point now that she was sitting so far above the ground, Tsunami couldn't say she regretted her choice. In fact, just beneath that sense of fear was a rush of exhilaration. The view's quite nice from up here, Tsunami yelled out to the two as she waved at them with her free arm, not too much though, out of fear of falling. While both Kakashi and Sakura found it impressive that he could not only get himself up that high, but also bring a grown woman with him, Sakura had to at least yell at Naruto for potentially risking the life of their client's daughter. Oh come on Sakura, it's fine, see? Naruto called out with a confident smirk as he let his body fall backwards, keeping his feet stuck to the branch with chakra as he came to stand upside down on the branch. To no surprise, the action freaked out both Sakura and Tsunami. Naruto, don't do that, are you trying to give me a heart attack? Tsunami yelled at the blonde, both of her hands firmly wrapped around the tree now after feeling like her heart had dropped to the ground. Having her yell at him nearly made the blonde lose his concentration and sent him falling to the ground, but Naruto managed to flip himself over to the trunk so he could hold on. Sorry, The blonde apologized as he tried to focus on attaching himself back to the tree so he wouldn't slid back down. You shouldn't worry too much. If he messes up I'll grab him before he hits the ground, Sasuke said from the tree next to Naruto's. Since he didn't have to carry anyone, the Uchiha was standing a few branches higher than where Naruto and Tsunami. Yeah? I'd like to see you try. Naruto yelled up at the boy, though Sasuke just shrugged the taunt off. After making sure that everyone was okay, Kakashi and Sakura headed back to the house to leave them to their training, offering to take Tsunami with them once Naruto got her back on the ground. If Tsunami thought it was terrifying going up, then she damn near had that heart attack coming down, squeezing her eyes shut so she didn't have to see the ground getting closer as she rode on the blonde's back. Now, another day had come and gone with the sun having set and everyone sitting around the dinner table again, everyone except for Naruto and Sasuke. Now they're both late. I wouldn't have expected that from Sasuke, Sakura commented as Tsunami and Hinoka placed everyone's plates out on the table. As the teen finished saying this, the door behind her clicked open. Supporting one another, Sasuke and Naruto slowly walked in through the open door. Seeing them, Tazuna was the first to say anything. What happened to you? You look like something the cat dragged in, the old man told them. Even worn out as they were, Naruto had the energy to give a big grin and proudly said, "We both made, all the way to the top." Hearing this, Kakashi told them, "Good. Now we move on. Starting tomorrow you're both bodyguards for Tazuna." Hearing his sensei, Naruto immediately went to celebrate with a big old cheer as he tossed his free hand into the air and consequentially sending him and Sasuke down onto their asses. At least his antics got a laugh out of the others. Once Super was finished, Tazuna figured now was a good time to address this while everyone was still around the table, and so he began. In a few more days the bridge will be complete. I have you to thank for that, but I've been meaning to ask. Why did you stay and protect me even after finding out I lied to bring you here? Those who stray from the path of justice have no courage, but under the wing of a strong leader cowardice cannot survive, Kakashi responded. When he was met with blank expressions, he explained, that was a quote from the first Hokage. Listening to Kakashi's words and staring at Naruto, who was resting his head on the table, Inari began to think about his father, about Kaiza, about the advice he told him, and about what happened to him at the hands of Gato. As he did, tears began to well up in his eyes. Soon they became too much and started rolling down his face before falling and hitting the table as they quietly asked, "But why?" Not quite hearing him, Naruto raised his head. "What did you say?" the blonde asked. Slamming his hands down on the table, the boy stood up, tears silently flowing down his cheeks. "All this stupid training is just a waste of time. Gato's got a whole army, they'll just beat you down and destroy you. These cool things you all say, they don't mean anything. No matter what you do, the strong always win and the weak always lose," Inari loudly said as the others watched on. After the outburst, a short moment of silence fell over the room, that is until Naruto spoke up. "Just speak for yourself," the blonde said as he put his head back down in his arms. "It won't be like that for me, you got that?" Naruto told him. "Why won't you be quiet? Just looking at you makes me sick. You don't know anything about this country, you're just butting in. Always laughing and playing around, you don't know what it's like to suffer and be treated like dirt." Inari yelled, striking a chord with the blonde. Clenching his fists, Naruto kept his head down. "Listen to yourself, whining and complaining like some sorry little victim," Naruto said, getting a small reaction from Inari. "You can whimper all day for all I care. You're nothing but a coward," Naruto told the boy, lifting his head up to look Inari in the eye. Unable to say anything in return, Inari just watched as Naruto got up and left the table. Sitting out on the edge of the dock running along his house with his knees pulled up to his chest, Inari tried to work out everything that has happened over the last week in his head. He just couldn't understand how someone could keep a smile when faced with someone as powerful as Gato, and every time he saw Naruto or the others smeeing like that, he felt bad about himself because he could. As he sat there in silence, a lone figure came up next to him. Without a word, Hinoka sat down next to the boy and let her feet hang out over the calm water, her eyes focused on the moon reflected in the night sea. For a while they just sat like that, no words passing between them as they kept their thoughts to themselves. "He doesn't hate you," Inari heard. Lifting his head up, he looked over to Hinoka with a curious look. Not once had he heard her say anything since she arrived, but surely that voice had to be. "Your grandfather Told us about your father, Hinoka said, her eyes never leaving the moon's reflection. Naruto also grew up without a father, and his mother was sick for many years after his birth. The village he grew up in, despite the sacrifices that were made on that day, they hold an unspoken grudge against him for the part he unwillingly had during that night. His whole life he's wanted to gain their recognition and protect the few precious people he's found with all his strength. Even so, I've never seen him cry or give up, Hinoka said as Inari listened to every word. I think he gave up crying one day and strove to push past all the pain and loneliness. If anyone knows what you're going through, it'd be Naruto, Hinoka said. Turning to look at Inari, Hinoka had a gentle expression as she told him what Naruto said earlier, harsh as it was. He's probably told himself that 1,000 times. Once Hinoka finished, the two of them continued to sit there for a while longer, their gazes turning once more to the open sea. After listening to her, Inari had a lot more to think about, even if he didn't quite have a conclusion yet. Beneath the nearly finished bridge, a small wooden boat approached, silently bringing Zabuza and Haku to their destination. As the pair neared the bridge, the Gato's voice started booming over the radio. Still wasting time licking your wounds? I hired you to do a job you know. Are you listening, Zabuza? Hey, the short man got out before Zabuza stopped on the device. Haku, are you ready? The man asked his accomplice. Yes. The teen answered before both turned their heads to look up at the bridge, the sound of construction work echoing down to the water's surface. Rushing downstairs, still wearing his gray pajamas, Naruto poked his head into the kitchen to see Tsunami washing dishes. Where's everybody? Where's they all go? The blonde hurriedly asked. Pausing in her housework, Tsunami raised her head before looking over at the blonde. Oh, Naruto, your sensei wanted to let you rest. You got the day off, the woman told him and watched as Naruto went to run back upstairs. Gua, I knew it, they ditched me, the blonde cried out along the way as he pulled off his pajamas while heading back to his room. After rushing to get changed, Naruto came running back down, yelling out a quick goodbye as he left through the front door. Tsunami once more looked over her shoulder, having just missed him this time. With a smile, the woman just shook her head and went back to the dishes. Hold on, what the heck is this? Tazuna fearfully asked after he and the others had arrived at the end of the bridge to see his fellow co-workers beaten up and left unconscious. What happened? Someone was here, someone got to them. The man yelled out. Could it be? Kakashi wondered, his senses going on high alert as thick mist rolled in. Sasuke, Sakura, Hinoka, get ready. The man called out to the others as they formed a defensive circle around Tazuna. I knew he was alive. He just couldn't wait for round 2, Kakashi thought as he waited for Zabuza to make the first move. Sorry to keep you waiting, Kakashi. Zabuza's words called out from the mist before in an instant the group was surrounded by several water clones. With a smile, Kakashi turned at the hip to look at Sasuke. With the okay from his sensei, Sasuke leapt into action as the clones came in to kill. With honed speed and skill, the young Uchiha slashed through each and every clone before quickly retaking his place in the formation. Oh, so you could see they were water clones? The group heard Zabuza once more. Looking further down the bridge, they saw the man and Haku standing at the edge of the mist. Looks like you've got a rival, Haku, the man said. So it seems, Zabuza's young apprentice responded. For a few moments both parties sized the other up. Eventually, Kakashi was the first to break the silence. So I was right, it was all an act. I'd bet you've been pulling that trick for a long time, the silver-haired Junin said. Kakashi-sensei. Sasuke spoke up to gain the man's attention. Once he had Kakashi's eye on him, Sasuke made a single request, that he'd get to fight the girl in the mask. Over with Zabuza and Haku, he's quite impressive. Even though they were only 1/10 the strength of the original water clone jutsu, he did destroy them all, Haku commented. That move still gave us the first advantage. Now use it, Zabuza instructed her, neither agreeing or disagreeing with her comment. Right, Haku said before making her approach. With light feet and nimble movements, the girl spun her way over to the group, kicking up wind and water in her path. As she got closer, Sasuke's eyes never left her form, studying her every movement. This is it, this'll be the first real battle I use them in, Sasuke thought to himself as he readied his kunai for the oncoming attack. In the back of his mind, memories of the past welled up. It was late in the day and the skies over Konoha had turned a vibrant shade of orange. Sitting atop a large boulder within an unmarked training group, Sasuke was staring blankly at the setting sun, his legs pulled up tightly against his chest. He'd been sitting in this same spot for hours now in an almost trance-like state. "Your mother's been worried about you," the boy heard from the side. He didn't bother looking though, he already knew who it was. Climbing up on the rock, the young woman with long brown sat next to him, having a similarly saddened expression. She had a small mole under her right eye, wore a long-sleeved, high-collared purple shirt with the Uchiha clan symbol on the back, baggy blue pants, a shuriken oscillator on her right leg, red armband on her left arm, and a long purple fingerless glove that ran nearly the length of her arm. For a while the pair sat there in silence. So much had happened and none of it felt real. The Uchiha clan, a powerful clan that had been formed long before shinobi villages had been reduced to a handful of individuals in a single night. How did this happen? How could it have happened? Why did it happen? These were among many questions those left kept asking themselves. This chain of events stretched back to the night of the Kyuubi attack. On that night, Kushina had been targeted by a powerful Sharingan wielder after the seal holding back the tailed beast had been weakened by childbirth. Despite the fourth Hokage's best efforts, the man had extracted the Kyuubi and placed it under his control before unleashing it upon an unsuspecting Konoha. The village had been left in ruin and many of the shinobi who had been faced the beast and lived placed the blame on the Uchiha. Even after the report Kushina had given, placing the blame on a single rogue Uchiha, many of the shinobi held their fear and distrust for the whole clan. When it came time to rebuild the village, many of the clans were moved to different parts of the village. The Uchiha were no different. Although Fugaku had voiced his disagreement, the clan had been moved to the outskirts of Konoha. Many within the clan took this as a sign that those in charge of the village had turned against them, a feeling that only grew as time passed. For years Fugaku struggled to maintain peace between the clan and the village, choosing to believe in the third Hokage and Kushina to help him heal the rift that had formed. While it couldn't be said Fugaku had support within the clan, those who opposed him came to view him as a traitor who let the village walk all over them. After years of this environment swirling with hate and mistrust, things had come to a boil. The rogue faction within the clan waited for their chance, and while Fugaku was alone they struck quickly and without mercy. They had thought that the rest of the clan would come to their side once the fighting started. They had been wrong. By the time the village had sent Anbu to deal with the coup d'état, the Uchiha district had already become a bloodbath. Clan member against clan member, brother against brother, friend against friend, the Uchiha had fought with one another to the bitter end. Today they'd been informed that Itachi was to be labeled a rogue shinobi for the sake of the village. "I'll bring him back," Sasuke eventually said, breaking the silence that had formed between the two of them as they sat there. Looking to her side, Izumi saw the young boy staring out into the distance, his fledgling Sharingan active. "One day I'll clear Itachi's name and bring him home," Sasuke declared with conviction. For the first time in days, smile formed on Izumi's face as she listened to the boy. "And when you do, we'll welcome him with open arms," the young woman said. "Those eyes," Haku commented, her senbon held firmly against Sasuke's kunai as she stared into his Sharingan. "That's right, the blood of the Uchiha runs through my veins," Sasuke told her with a confident grin as brought his kunai back and made an attack of his own. If he was going to bring Itachi back, then losing here wasn't an option. Watching the two clash with one another, Zabuza contemplated what their next action should be. They had only planned for Kakashi and the Uzumaki girl, yet this boy not only possessed the Sharingan but was matching Haku in speed. "Haku, enough playing around. Finish this quickly," Zabuza yelled out to the girl. "Right," Haku responded as she jumped back, gaining some distance from the Uchiha. Coming to a stop, she began to build up a large amount of chakra. "I'm sorry it's come to this," Haku told him as the temperature dropped. Forming an odd hand sign, the girl began her jutsu. Starting from behind the Uchiha, the water from the clones started to rise and freeze, forming panels of reflective ice. Sasuke watched as more and more ice mirrors formed, eventually making a dome out of the floating panels. Even with his Sharingan, this jutsu was, did this girl possess a Kekkei Genkai of her own? Once finished, Haku dropped her hands back to her sides and stepped towards the closest mirror as everyone watched. Without hesitation she continued forward, merging into the ice till her reflection was shown on each mirror. Not willing to leave this to Sasuke any longer, Kakashi started to rush over to the boy but was intercepted by Zabuza. "If you enter this fight, you fight me," Zabuza told Kakashi as he stood in his way. Not good, Kakashi thought to himself before calling out for Hinoka to help Sasuke. With a quick nod, the girl started to run for the ice mirrors. "Are you sure about that?" Hinoka heard as she, Tazuna, and Sakura turned around to see a second Zabuza behind the bridge builder. With terror in his eyes, Tazuna watched as the water clone swung his sword, only for it to burst into water as golden chains pierced through it. As Tazuna took a few shaky steps back, Hinoka rushed back over to him. "The moment she leaves the bridge builder, he's dead," Zabuza warned as he held his blade ready. Though it was a bit aggravating to be put in this situation. Originally Haku was supposed to handle the Uzumaki girl while he and Kakashi had their rematch. With the Uchiha boy in the mix now, he had to stall for time. "Now, we'll begin," Haku said as her reflections pulled out Senbon in unison. As she began her assault, the blinding speed at which the Senbon came at him was enough to give his Sharingan a challenge. Despite his best attempts to dodge and deflect the weapons, Sasuke still took several dozen hits as his body and clothes were being shredded by seemingly endless barrage of needles. "Hinoka," Sakura began as she watched this through the barrier the red-haired girl had made. She didn't need to say any more as Hinoka shifted the chains around to make a gap for Sakura to exit from. Rushing out, Sakura reached into her pouch for a kunai as she ran for the ice mirrors. "Take this," the pinkett yelled as she leapt into the air and tossed the blade at one of the mirror. Just as it was going to make contact, Haku's upper BDY came out of the mirror and grabbed the implement by the handle. Looking over to Sakura, Haku silently gave the blade a single twirl before firmly grasping it again. It was a decent attempt to save her teammate, but Haku was simply too fast for something like that to work. Haku was about to re-enter the mirror and continue her assault when a swirling sound, caught her attention. Jerking her head to the side, Haku saw as the shinobi she'd spoken to in the forest ran at her with a clone and a swirling blue orb in his hand. Making a quick jump at the last second, the blonde thrust his hand out, shouting, "Rasengan," before his attack hit and kicked up a large cloud of dust and debris.
That's all for now. If you enjoy this video, then please like, share and do comments.